Hey Seth, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Jonathan. How are you on this fine podcasting day?
It is a fine podcasting day indeed. Excited to continue to dive into Epiphany, this season of the church marked by Christ's revealing to the wise men, the magi, and kind of the end of the Christmas season.
Yeah.
We're getting into it, Seth, but there's only one way to really get into it, and that's with a certain question. What would you do in this particular situation? Seth, I know that for you and I, attending a wedding these days, if we're involved in a wedding, we are typically involved as the officiant. But let's say you're not officiating. Would you want to be the DJ or the day of coordinator at a wedding?
DJ.
DJ? That was
Oh,
fast.
yes. The day of corner, that's so much pressure. I just would not want that on me. The DJ has a lot of pressure, but I could rise to the occasion. But if I'm the day of coordinator, if you mess up like one thing, then everything else like ripples, right? So like I mess up the timing for something. Like then all of a sudden everything else is shift. But if I play one bad song as the DJ, it's okay. I have time to play
You have,
another
you have
bop.
more songs to.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
How about you?
I think I don't know. I'm trying to think about where my skill set would be best used. I think some of the ways my brain works might be helpful with a day of coordinator, but I don't feel confrontational enough to be a day of coordinator. So I feel like I would lean towards DJ just because the DJ is just kind of like doing their thing. They come and they set up and they press play, do a little mix, whatever.
True.
Um, I think that could be fun. It is really fun. I do like, and I have a thread of reels or TikToks that I see that are like DJs either preparing or doing like really silly mashups for for weddings, including my favorite one, which is I think has gotten the rounds like or has made the rounds pretty seriously, is one where they're doing the build up, the EDM build up in Turn Down for What. It's like
Yeah.
that ramp up, and then instead of going to the drop right afterwards, it starts playing Dancing Queen. so so and then it just shows this guy in the who's dancing just like glare at the DJ like, what did you do to me? So stuff like that, or people mashing up songs that didn't need to be mashed up. That kind of stuff I feel like I could have fun with it in a way, even if it was just entertaining to me. It would be fun.
See, I love mashups. Patty makes fun of me because this is when I was in high school. The radio station on Friday night would play like remixes and
Oh
mashups,
yeah, uh-huh.
and we like my friends and I loved that. We thought it was the coolest.
There was the other one that I just heard recently was they like remixed "It's Me, Hi, I'm the Problem, It's Me" by Taylor Swift. But then
Yeah.
after they played it for a little while, they just clipped the "It's Me" and like played that over and over again, and then
Oh
transitioned
yeah.
to "It's Me" from "Defying Gravity" and played the end of that, which was a big hit.
No, that's a good one, man. Now I gotta just look up some mashups later today.
Yeah, I expect to see a wide variety of things sent my way. Well, Seth, there is a pretty significant wedding. You might be able to guess which one that is featured in our texts for this second Sunday after Epiphany, and that's the wedding at Cana.
Okay, no. Yeah.
Yes. So this is from John's Gospel. This is Jesus's first public moment of ministry, and his first public moment of ministry is keeping the party going. His mom comes to him and
Yeah.
says, "Hey Jesus, they're out of wine." And he's basically like, "What do you want me to do about it?" And she functionally like disregards his question and turns to the servants that are working at the wedding and says, "Just do whatever he tells you." Like she knows what's going on. So of course Jesus turns water into wine. the like person in charge, maybe even the day of coordinator, so to speak, when they tasted the wine that was coming out, they were surprised because they're like, we would normally save the best stuff. We would only have that up front, and then we would use the less expensive wine or whatever
At the
at the end after
when
people were
already drunk.
Exactly. Fun fact about this passage that has nothing to do with it's not actually that fun. This passage is used to support young Earth creationist theories, to suggest that God can create things with the appearance of age because Jesus turned water into presumably well-aged wine. So I'm not joking about that.
I have not heard that.
I've been in
That's really
classrooms where that argument has been seriously put forward. So, anyways, not a huge sidebar conversation, but it came to mind and I felt compelled to share. But the thing that I wanted to point out is this distinction between what Jesus was capable of doing and how people were perceiving what he could do, especially his mother, Mary. She was aware that Jesus could fix the situation very quickly. So much so that in John's gospel, this is documented as Jesus' first kind of public miracle, public act of ministry. And it's really interesting too, because this passage is paired with the passage from 1 Corinthians chapter 12, which is functionally centers around this idea there are a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit, varieties of services, same Lord, varieties of activities, but it's the same God who activates all of them in everyone, and to each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good.
Okay.
And it goes on to then list some types of gifts that were evident in the church that Paul was speaking about to the church in Corinth. So Corinthians 12 and Corinthians 14 are two of the most famous passages in the New Testament about kind of gifts of the Spirit, and they're centered around 1 Corinthians 13, which starts, if I speak in the tongues of angels but have not love, I am nothing but a crashing gong or a clanging cymbal. Like it's like you can have all these gifts, you don't have love, it doesn't matter.
I call that the Oreo cookie.
There you go.
Because you gotta have the stuff in the middle.
Yeah,
Gotta have the cream.
Just the cookies themselves, not that great.
Exactly. Yeah.
So these passages together just make me think. Go back to this moment. Jesus is demonstrating gifts of some kind, right? Let's think of his abilities, his gifts as kind of an example for us. His capabilities. A lot of what our gifts have to do with, they don't exist in isolation.
Yeah.
A lot changes when people become aware of our gifts, especially in the church. And so when it comes to gifts, and it could be more broadly than this too, but I'm thinking about when other people have opinions and perceptions of us or of others, when people have perceptions and opinions that carry a lot of weight, who do those people tend to be in the spaces where we are most often? And we can speak in generalities if we need to protect either those involved or ourselves who are still entering into these circumstances. But whose opinions seem to carry the most weight when we're in relationship with other people?
Yeah, I think it's people who already have a lot of power. People who, it's like ironically sometimes people who have shown their gifts then also get to decide who else has the gift too, like the needed gift for that moment. So I think like this is I don't think I've experienced this, but it's one example I could see is that like someone in the church who's like really good at preaching gets to decide sort of who else is good at preaching, who else gets to use the pulpit, who else gets to like have a very public voice in that way. And that excludes people whose voice may be different from that particular preacher's voice. So that's just one example that I could see.
Yeah, there's something, as you're saying that, I'm realizing that I think it's a common maybe misunderstanding, even if, not an intentional choice, but maybe an assumption that comes from these passages of like, oh, the gifted people will kind of present themselves and won't need space to be developed, or,
Yeah.
and leaning on folks, like you said, that are already demonstrating gifts in these areas to be the ones who then determine who else has gifts in these areas can be really limiting in terms of who actually gets opportunities, who gets the opportunity to develop their gifts too. It's almost like the gift is not like something that is fully refined and presented already. It's like an initial propensity for something or initial strength in an area, but doesn't mean it doesn't need practice. And certainly
a really helpful point.
And certainly some considerations too around, like you said, whose voices then kind of are, just by the very nature of how we organize ourselves, are excluded, and who is limited in having opportunity because of some of those things as well. So a helpful consideration, to be sure, to be thinking about like how we weigh people's perceptions. I want to take a slightly different angle with this though, Seth.
Sure.
So let's say we've identified things as our gifts. We've been either through self-reflection or experiences in community or with mentors, we've identified some things that we feel gifted in. We feel like this is a space where I feel energized, or where I feel like I can contribute something that's very meaningful or thoughtful, or this is a way that my mind works that comes very easily to me, where it might not come so easily to others. So let's say we're in that kind of space. We've got some things on our list as gifts, and then we encounter someone or someones or a circumstance that see those very same things as something entirely different. Not even not gifts, but maybe ways that we are perpetuating harm.
Yeah.
So to illuminate this point, I actually want to bring up the story of Wicked. Now, I will say what I'm about to reference does come from the second act of the musical. So if you're if you're a movie only fan of Wicked, consider yourself alerted for spoilers. But in the first act of Wicked, we learn that we can at least question the title of the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, right? That
yes.
The title of Wonderful may not be so accurate. In the second act, there is a song between the wizard and Elphaba called Wonderful, where I might not get these lyrics exactly right, but to an effect, the wizard sings in the middle of this song about basically how he showed up and everyone started calling him Wonderful, and so that's what he is. He says, where I come from, we talk about and believe all sorts of things that aren't true. We call them history. He then goes on to say, a man is a traitor or a liberator. A rich man is a thief or a philanthropist. Is one a crusader or a ruthless invader? It's all about which label is able to persist. He then goes on to saying, there are precious few at ease. Precious, the word from our last week's episode. There are precious few at ease with moral ambiguities, so we pretend as though they don't exist. And then goes on to conclude the song talking about how they call him wonderful, so he is wonderful. And so I think that song and those lyrics, as much as I love that show, that song is actually, I think, central to the idea of what Wicked is all about, right? It's like, who's telling the story, who has the perspective. And so applying that lens to our gifts, what happens when we have something that we hold, maybe we do hold precious, a gift for ours that we've seen be meaningful, that we realize and recognize is not only maybe not meaningful, but might actually be doing the opposite of what we think it's doing in certain settings. What do you think happens when that occurs?
Whew. I mean, man, I think first it's just like it's so hard, like at an interpersonal level, to like hear that what we thought was helping is hurting.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
internally, it's just
Mm-hmm.
so difficult to like make that fit in our worldview. But I think, I don't know, we have to listen, and we have to actually act on that. It's like, I just think I don't know if I've ever used this example on the podcast, but I use this a lot in real life when people say that someone's being a jerk, and the other person's like, "No, I'm not." I'm like, "Well, it's not up to you. It's up to everybody else."
Right.
And like that's how I think about using our gifts too. Like if one person is like, "No, I'm helping. I'm helping." And everyone else is like, "That's not true. Like
Yeah.
you are hurting." It's not, that's who it's up to. It's up to the people who are affected. And another way to think of this is like when, I mean, in like a smaller sense, is like when you do something and someone, or you say something and someone says, "Oh, that was really hurtful," and you go, "Oh, well, I was trying to make you feel better." Well, the intention might be good, but the effect was bad. And like that's really the key, I think, is
Yeah.
less the intention and more the effect.
Right.
So all that to say is like we really do need to reevaluate what we've been doing and the way we've been using our gifts. If people think that like we're not using them well, we're not using them in ways that are actually loving.
Yeah. You're highlighting an important point about gifts that I think in our context is often overlooked. It's like we're ready to admit like we all have gifts for the community,
Yeah.
but we don't often say that these gifts are of the community or they belong to the community. Like it's not just mine to protect and keep for myself and use sparingly. These are gifts that are intended to advance, not even advance. They're intended to build the beloved community, as the passage from First Corinthians says. It's
Yeah.
these manifestations of the Spirit are given for the common good, the shared good, not for one's advancement. And I think that gets exactly at what you're saying. Like this is not an individual consideration. You're not judge and jury about how your use of your gifts impacts others or impacts your community. Like the community gets to decide that, because that's what community is about. And so I'm right there with you. I think it really forces us to listen and understand. Yeah, like where it's no secret that the church has been deeply aligned in ways that are harmful with structures of power. And so I also ask the question, like, when do our gifts like start and falling over that side of things too? When do they start aligning more with the preservation of power than they do with faithfully building our community? And it's not an either or thing. Like you can fluctuate back and forth in that all the time, but it those are the kinds of questions I ask too. Is like, when do we start seeing the adverse impacts of things that we hold dear, that I keep coming back to this word from last week, these things that are precious to us, even if they're gifts, when they don't have the impact that we hope for.
Yeah. And maybe I kind of breezed through this point, but like the challenge is to hear those criticisms.
Right.
Like, man, it's hard when when you think you've been doing the right thing, especially over time. Like when you think, oh,
Mm-hmm.
especially as the church, right? For years, we've been building this and we've been trying to work on this particular ministry and to make our food pantry better than ever. But actually, like, it's not helpful where we are here. We might have been better off giving the food to a different food pantry, for example, that's more accessible to people.
Right.
Like, that's hard to hear. That's just one small example. It's hard to hear that, like, what you thought was loving might actually have been hurting.
Yeah. I mean, that is also the core struggle of what's been labeled as white fragility too. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
the total lack of
True. That's a
willingness
great
to
point.
accept the possibility that you could be perpetuating some of these systems and ideas that are very clearly labeled as bad. It's like, how dare you call me a racist? Or how dare you say I'm being ableist or fat phobic? Like, we're so unwilling to consider that we could be participating in and perpetuating these systems when in fact I would say, to build off, Ibram X. Kendi and several other anti-racist and anti-colonial and anti-oppressionist theorists, critical theorists. It's like if you're not actively working against these systems, you are participating and perpetuating them.
Yeah.
And so if we can't at least first, as you've said so well, if we can't at least first accept the possibility that we could do something harmful, we're not going to make it very far in hearing others about how our experiences are impacting them, especially when we've done harm. So I guess my invitation for us, Seth, to wrap this episode up is, it's New Year. It's time for, you know, unrealistic goals and resolutions to be set, and for, I don't know.
Yes.
I'm trying to go into this year treating myself a little bit more gently than I might normally at the beginning of a new calendar year. But I'm just considering, how might we enter this new year with fresh eyes for our gifts? Like, when you think about how you're gifted, what does this conversation bring up for you, and how you may want to think about your gifts or utilize your gifts differently?
This is going back to a point you made earlier about the way that we can claim our gifts as ours for the community, but not have our gifts be of the community. I think that was your language, which I appreciated. I think, I mean, frankly, that I need to work on that. Like, I think I've held on to what gifts I have as very much mine. Maybe I should say, but like part of it is just like absolutely giving those gifts to the community that you have, and like letting them use those gifts however they think they're best appropriated, I guess I should say. Like, not that I'm the arbiter of when the gift gets doled out, but like when the community needs me to do something, to use whatever gift I have, like that's the time to listen to the community, to say, oh, okay, like they need me to do this, I need to step up too. I think that's such an important thing. Like, it's like a subtle mind shift. Like, the gift isn't mine, but the gift is ours. I think it's going to take me some time. It's going to take me a little practice to get used to that. To hold my gift not quite as tightly, and to give it to the community to use how they see fit. I also think that, like, that, just like we were talking about, that has the best chance of being truly loving.
Mm.
Like, if it's primarily up to me, like, I think there's a higher chance of harm, maybe I should say. But when we give
Mm.
it to the community, when we have that collective wisdom, I at least think we have a better chance of using it in ways that are helpful. Not to say that we won't use it in ways that are harmful,
Yeah,
but our chances
I think
better.
I would like to say it decreases the likelihood of harm, but
Yeah,
not eliminate it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And there's something beautiful about community experiences where folks are engaging and giving of themselves willingly and freely, and not out of a sense of obligation or out of a sense of guilt or shame. Like, I think that's where I'm looking for opportunities too. It's like, where can I offer myself? Not out of that sense of obligation, but out of a sense of like, hey, I think I could offer something meaningful here. And it's kind of hard because I'm really trying to be a little bit more protective of my time and my mental energy as I get into, I mean, just continue living and and existing, but especially thinking about getting this year into wrapping up PhD coursework and starting to research and write, like that needs my time and attention. Like,
Yeah.
how do I then start using gifts in service of my family and other spaces where I want to give more freely of myself, not spaces where I feel like I have to, or I'm obligated to. I think that's where I maybe looking for the right opportunity, you know.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate that. Like, I think that takes like a lot of reassessing, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, what's the opportunity that's right for me? Is this the right opportunity? And then you try it. And I think sometimes it's like, oh, this actually wasn't, you know, or this ballooned to be taking a lot more time and physical energy and mental energy than I thought. So I need to like reassess this. I appreciate that. Jonathan, I think you got to pray for us. I need prayer for this.
I'm glad to, Seth. Let's pray. Equipping God, you have made us for one another, far stronger together than we could ever be on our own. Help us realize that our gifts are not merely ours to protect and use, but that they can become immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine when we embrace your beloved community. Mindful of the many names by which your children cry out to you from all over the world, I pray in the name of the sommelier of Cana, Jesus Christ. Amen.